It's a procedural vote where we'll actually start the debate process. When you get a bill like this, you bring it to the floor of the Senate, you have a first vote to say let's begin the debate, so you have to vote to start the debate, then you can amend the vote, make any changes you want to be able to do on the bill itself, and then try to be able to get to final passage. So we have the first procedural vote today. Yeah, it's been remarkable the amount of misinformation that's been out all over the place on the bill. Let me tell you what the bill actually does. It builds more border wall. It adds 50,000 detention beds so we in catch and release. It adds more deportation flights. It adds additional detection equipment at our border to pick up fentanyl. It adds sanctions on cartels and individuals that are trafficking fentanyl into our country. It adds more ICE agents, more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more immigration judges. It changes the asylum law itself so that it makes it much harder for people to actually qualify for asylum coming into the country, and it speeds up the hearings. Right now it takes 10 years to get to a hearing. This would do a hearing in days, weeks, or months at the most, and so we can immediately have people that actually get picked up and actually get deported. The interesting one is this 5,000 number that people throw around. They keep throwing this number around on it, 5,000 people in a day on it, which is absolutely absurd. The first 5,000 people they come across are detained, screened, and deported. After 5,000, we've got so many people come in, we drop the screening and you just detain them and then deport them. So none of these folks are just being allowed into the country at all. It just changes the process on the second 5,000 to say we're so overwhelmed, we don't even have time to screen you anymore. We're just turning everybody around. So that number's been grossly misrepresented all over the place. I think it's either people just didn't read the bill or didn't follow it, or they saw some posting on Facebook and believe that. We're trying to detain and deport every individual that doesn't qualify for asylum, and that's the vast number of individuals coming across our border by the millions. Yeah, it has been difficult because the bill is 370 pages long itself, but literally within minutes of when we released the bill, we had all kinds of folks that posted, oh, it's a terrible bill, I'm not going to vote for it at all. It was clear they were never planning to be able to vote for it. There was no intention to be able to move on border security issues because there's no way they could have gone through 370 pages of detail in that time period. My focus has been, we're not getting everything we want in this bill, and some folks have said, I want everything or I want nothing. And so if we don't pass this and we don't move forward to even debate it today, we'll end up with nothing in the same status quo that we have. Now I have to tell you, there are a lot of authorities that President Biden has he's not using today. If President Biden would actually enforce the law the way that he has the ability to be able to enforce the law, things would be dramatically different. But even under President Trump, we had days of 4,000 people crossing illegally in a day, and they were struggling to try to get additional authorities. The authorities the Trump administration was asking for in 2019 are in this bill to say we would never have a day, regardless of who's president, somebody that's going to enforce it or not enforce it, we'd never have a day again that they wouldn't be able to enforce the law because they'd have more laws and authorities at their disposal. Yeah, it's kind of all over the place. The folks that are telling me they're voting against it, some of them are voting against it because they're saying President Trump told them they don't want to fix the border this year, he can fix it next year. Other folks have policy disagreements, and there are areas of disagreement on the bill. That's fair on it. Some folks are saying, hey, there's just still reading through it because it is 370 pages and they need a little bit more time to be able to go through it. So I don't fault my colleagues for trying to be able to go through and to be able to figure out how we can solve this. But at the end of the day, we can't just do nothing. The border's wide open. We've got to get Joe Biden actually enforcing the border again, the authorities that he has, but we've got to fix the loopholes that are currently in the law, regardless of who's president. We've got to actually close those. That involves Congress coming to some bipartisan agreement, which it will be. If it goes to the Senate, it's always going to have to be a bipartisan agreement to go through the Senate. So that means we've got to sit down together, figure out what we can do together, actually pass it. This is only a partisan issue in Washington, D.C. Everywhere else in the country, they see it as a national security issue. Yeah, Speaker Johnson is very passionate about trying to get the border fixed as well. He's been passionate about this for a long time. He's worked on these issues for a long time. He's trying to be able to work with a conference that he has a 2-vote majority in the House of Representatives right now, and they have all kinds of different challenges, just trying to be able to find the opportunity to be able to work together. So that's his challenge, is trying to be able to build unity in the House. My challenge is trying to be able to build a bipartisan bill in the Senate. We built a bipartisan bill in the Senate, and what I've said to the Speaker is, if you can build a bipartisan bill in the House that'll also pass the Senate, do it. But we can't just ignore this problem. We've got to actually keep working it until it gets solved. Yeah, it significantly raises the bar to actually seek asylum coming into the United States, because if you come across right now on our southern border, all you have to say to one of the agents is, I have fear in my country. When you say that, you're released into the United States, most of them for 8 to 10 years until they await a hearing to even see if they're eligible for asylum. This bill changes that dramatically. When you cross the border, you have a higher standard to prove that you have persecution in your country. It adds 3 different eligibility bars, including could you have just moved to another safe place in your own country? Or on the way here, could you have stopped and stayed in another country and been safe? Or do you have a criminal record of any type? Amazingly enough, that's not currently in statute right now to be able to screen for at the beginning. We would add all of those things. It would significantly increase the difficulty of requesting asylum. And then if they get through the first screening, they're not waiting 10 years until they get their hearing on it. They're waiting weeks or months before they get their hearing. We also, by the way, stop the work permits that are just handed out at the border. Every day, including today, there are thousands of work permits that are just handed out to people as they cross the border. We stop that process and say that is a magnet for people that are coming. We can't just hand out all these work permits. Yeah, it's been interesting. When there's a political conversation here in Washington, D.C. about where things are going to go politically on it, we actually talk to the people that are in the field, like the Border Patrol Council. The National Border Patrol Council came out in strong support of this bill, saying it would change the status quo that's actually happening at the border. They want to have this. CBP folks have come out and said they want to be able to have this bill because it would make a significant difference. Again, even they said there's even more that we would like to be able to have, but this would dramatically change what's actually happening at the border from 1,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 people that are crossing a day. It would drop it to hundreds immediately, and that's a manageable number for them to be able to quickly detain, do the screening, and then deport those folks quickly. So procedural vote, if that actually passes, then we would actually be on the bill. We'd be able to amend it. There are lots of conversations about it. For instance, people have said this 5,000 number, saying, can we get that lower? I said, absolutely. I would support an amendment to be able to do that so that our emergency authority doesn't kick in that late. There are lots of different ways that we can actually change this, but we got to get on it to actually amend it, to be able to go through the process, then send it to the House. They would then have, in the House, have an opportunity to be able to amend it or to be able to conference between both the House and the Senate and to be able to get a final product. But to get something started, we've got to get this procedural vote through so we can get a chance to be able to make any changes that need to happen on the bill to actually get it passed.